Hi guys, I wanted to make a video today on a couple of books that I really enjoyed and found very useful and informative. One of them is called The Emotional Life of Your Brain, and I read this maybe 7 years ago now. And at the time, I was on a non-fiction binge, and I'd be picking up non-fiction relating to neuroscience and uh, behavioral patterns, that kind of thing. I'd be picking up books on that left, right, and center. And so this is one of the books which, I enjoyed all of them, but this is one of the books which sort of really changed my perspective on a couple of things. Chief among them was my view of myself. And so in the book, the author goes over, and this is in the first couple of chapters, the author goes over how personality is assessed. So how you can categorize yourself throughout, like in a personality matrix, and there are multiple types of like tests that you can do to see like what you are. One of them is a Briggs-Myers test. You can just Google that, and it asks you a series of questions which tend to repeat after a while, but in different wording to trip you up. And then that gives you it gives you a personality type. There, and it sort of divides everyone in the world into one of 16 groupings, and within that grouping it looks at 4 key areas, and it tells you in the scale of that area whether you're high or low in that particular attribute. But in this book, The Emotional Life of Your Brain, he just looks at the main areas of measuring people's personality, and it shows you, just based on very few questions, where you lie in the scale of each of these items. So I'm just going to go and get the book and let you know. For personality is one of the ways of measuring personality is through the big 5 personality dimensions. These are extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, emotional stability, and openness to experience. Now, people who are low in extroversion are quiet, withdrawn, and unassertive. People high in extroversion are outgoing, energetic, and gregarious. People low in agreeableness are aloof and easily irritated. People high in agreeableness are warm, considerate, and good-natured. People low in conscientiousness are impulsive and carefree, and people high in conscientiousness are responsible, dependable, and goal-oriented. And another interesting way of looking at conscientiousness is open up your sock drawer. What does it look like? Are the pairs like neatly folded and placed in there in an organized way, or is everything just thrown in? If everything's just thrown in, you're low in conscientiousness, and if everything is OCD, then you're high in conscientiousness. And then there's emotional stability. People low in emotional stability are moody, tense, and have lower self-confidence. People high in emotional stability are stable and confident. I'm just reading this off of Google, and I actually don't like these descriptions very much. They're very judgy, but anyway, openness to experience. People low in openness to experience, it says narrow field of interests, likes, the tired, and true. Oh, okay. And so that's like if you get this, order the same thing all the time, which I do, but I wouldn't say that I don't have openness to experience. And people high in openness to experience are imaginative, curious, and open to new ideas. But then, of course, this is a spectrum, so, right at the end of the spectrum is that, and right at the higher end of the spectrum is a completely different thing. So then I would say that I would fall in the middle of that, I suppose, because I can be impulsive Is that the right word? No, not impulsive. What's the good word? What's the one that you're supposed to be? The thing that you're supposed to be is not boring, but the word is spontaneous. It took me minutes, so it just goes to show you that I don't even have the fucking word ready to hand. But I can be spontaneous at times, but it's not my first choice. There was a time, probably 7 years ago, at the time that I was reading this book, when me and my sister would meet up for lunch during our lunch break. And one day we were bored as fuck and we just decided that we wanted to drive to Dubai, which is a 5-hour drive. And so we did that. So I can be, I wanted to say impulsive again, spontaneous. See, I'm actually already judging spontaneity by calling it impulsive, but it's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. It's on one end of the spectrum or another. But you know, I would put myself in the middle of that. So those are the 5 personality traits that people are usually measured on. But what this book does is it explores the emotions behind how you classify someone. So in this instance, I would say that although I'm the type of person that does like to order the same thing all the time, and I like to know where I'm going, I like to know what I'm doing, I don't like fucking surprises, I don't like surprise parties, I don't like anything like that. So the emotions behind that are actually more useful to you in determining, you know, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and what areas you need to develop and what areas you don't need to develop. Because I can easily judge something like that and say, well, I don't want to do that. But when you look at it from the perspective of your emotions and how you know your brain patterns, it's easier to see the benefit in changing. And it's important to change. We must all change. A lot of us don't change or take a very long time to accept that we must. But we really must all be changing and growing and developing all the time. And to be set in your ways is just setting yourself up for disappointment in life, because life changes all the time. Change is inevitable. This is the book. It's reversed. Okay, The Emotional Life of Your Brain. What's the author's name? Richard J. Davidson. Okay, so that's about your personality. However, what this book does is it looks at your emotional style. And so based on neuroscientific research, and that is looking at brain patterns and looking at behavioral patterns combined, 6 dimensions have been established to reflect your emotional style. So the first thing that they look at is, and the whole book just talks about these 6 dimensions. It's really fucking interesting. So the first area that's looked at is resilience, and that is how slowly or quickly you can recover from adversity. And so resilience, so you'll be asked a series of questions on whether you can shake off setbacks or if you suffer a meltdown after a setback. When faced with an emotional or another challenge, can you muster the tenacity and determination to soldier on, or do you feel helpless and you simply surrender? So that's like an example of the spectrum in which you may answer this question. The second dimension is outlook, and that is how long you are able to sustain positive emotion. Can you fill your own cup, or do you require others to fill your cup for you? And so questions like, do you seldom let emotional clouds darken your sunny outlook on life are asked, or do you maintain a high level of energy and engagement even when things don't go your way? Do you tend towards cynicism and pessimism, struggling to see anything positive? And so this will answer, you know, where you fit on the spectrum of outlook. Social intuition is the third dimension. And so this talks about how adept you are at picking up social signals from the people around you. And so for social intuition, you can establish like whether these statements are true or not. So one of the statements is, when I'm talking with people, I often notice subtle social cues about their emotions, discomfort, say, or anger before they acknowledge those feelings in themselves. So this asks you if you're empathic. And then at the other end of the spectrum, and of course, like there are a range of questions to establish where you lie on the spectrum, but at the other end of the spectrum, a statement like this might fit. I often feel as though I know more about, wrong statement. I am often taken by surprise when someone I'm talking with gets angry or upset at something I said for no apparent reason. And then we have self-awareness. And self-awareness in this context is different from social intuition. So it doesn't refer to like being aware of how you interact with other people. In this context, it refers to how well you perceive bodily feelings that reflect emotions. And so statements like these will help you to determine where you fit in the spectrum. And so it asks, I sometimes notice aches and pains and have no idea where they came from. Or it says, I believe I very much inhabit my body and feel at home and comfortable with my body. And I like to spend time being quiet and relaxed, just feeling what is going on inside me. When I exercise, I'm very sensitive to the changes it produces in my body. Or the other end of the spectrum, it would say, well, which matches with the first statement that I read. I frequently, more than a couple of times a month, find that my heart is racing or my pulse is pounding and I have no idea why. And so this is about how you interpret your bodily sensations and how you link them to emotions, and whether you understand what your own emotions are through sensory means, and not after an event has taken place. And then we have sensitivity to context, and this is how good you are at regulating your emotional responses to take into account the context you find yourself in. I'm just reading a book. This is your video, guys. I'm reading a book. And so this, to get a sense of where you fall on the sensitivity to context spectrum, it asks you to answer true or false to the following questions. I have been told by someone close to me that I am unusually sensitive to other people's feelings. Another question is, I often find myself censoring what I was about to say because I've sensed something in the situation that would make it inappropriate. An example of this would be, before responding to, honey, do these jeans make me look fat? And another statement that you can answer true or false to identify where you fall on the spectrum of sensitivity to context is, I notice when someone is acting in a way that seems out of place, such as behaving too casually at work, or I've been told by those close to me that I show good manners with strangers and in new situations. And finally, the sixth dimension is attention, how sharp and clear your focus is. So the statements that are asked to assess your attention style is, I can concentrate in a noisy environment. If I decide to focus my attention on a particular task, I find that I'm mostly able to keep it there. If I'm distracted by some unexpected event, I can refocus my attention on what I had been doing. And during periods of relative quiet, such as when I'm sitting on a train or a bus or waiting in line at a store, I notice a lot of the things around me, and so on. And so these 6 dimensions, and this book just talks about these 6 dimensions in different ways that you can, how to observe them within yourself, how to measure where you lie on the spectrum of all of these 6 different dimensions, and then what to do about it if you want to change that. So the second thing that I found incredibly interesting with this book was that the brain is malleable, and the way you process life, where you fit on any of these spectrums, is changeable. You can change it through practice, and one of the methods to do this is through meditation. So by stilling and quieting the mind and going into your body, into your own sensory sensations, you can change a lot of these things. So you can literally change the way your brain is wired. So you can, the patterns that your synapses form can be changed by practice, by just changing, you know, whether it's changing your outlook, or whether it's changing your attention, or whether it's learning how to become more comfortable within yourself so that you aren't distracted by your inner world and you can focus more on the outer world, or vice versa. If you have no sense of your inner world and too much of a sense of the outer world, you can also rebalance that. And Hunter's come here to enjoy this conversation. Hey, Hunter. Here he is. Look at Hunter. That's Hunter. Nice, isn't he? And so those were two things that I learned from this book. One of them was that I kind of had the wrong idea about who I was. In before answering these questions, like if you this was then like 7 years ago, if you had asked me how slowly or quickly do I recover from adversity, I might have said quite slowly. And actually that's not true of me at all. I'm very resilient and always have been. Or if you'd asked me then, like, what is my outlook on life? Is it positive or negative? I actually thought that I was pessimistic, and like, I'm not, you know. So it's just very interesting to look into these things so that you can really know yourself well. Like, you're the person who has to know yourself well. No one is responsible for knowing you. You're the one who's responsible for knowing yourself. And when you form a good relationship with yourself based on a truthful and deep understanding of who you are, how your brain works, that's how you can manifest for yourself positive relationships, and relationships that are also truthful and that are also based on reflecting back to you the positive attributes that you have, the light reflecting back to you, the light within you, mirroring back to you all of the good stuff that comes from you, rather than mirroring back to you the shadow, or what you falsely believe to be true, or what you believe to be true that actually isn't related to you. It's just a story you were told, or, you know, it's old programming. It's something that came from someone else, and it wasn't something that actually came from you. And so I'd like to just close this video by noting that although it's desirable to be Zen and to be very good at meditation and to make it into a ritual and a habit, and therefore, you know, according to neuroscience, it's going to rewire our brains and we're going to be more chill and more productive at the same time, which seems like a paradox to begin with, but it isn't. It is attainable. However, it's important to note that we're human beings and we are not meant to be Zen all the time. And if you're asking yourself, well, I'm doing all of these things and I'm meditating daily and I'm, you know, very self-aware and I'm constantly reading stuff like this and working on myself and whatever, and yet some days I just don't want to do anything. I don't want to leave the house. I don't want to fucking talk to anyone. I just want to sit around and watch TV. There's nothing wrong with that. You're a human being. You aren't meant to be Zen all the time. To impose this on yourself is a fallacy and it's a myth. And it's also treating yourself like you're a robot or a machine, just in a different way. So to be Zen all the time is said to be the opposite of living on autopilot and going through your day without thinking about anything. So, you know, to have awareness and to explore things and whatever is said to be the opposite of that. However, if you take it to extremes and you actually ignore how you really feel, then you're again treating yourself as though you're a robot, and as though you're a machine, and as though you're meant to perform on demand, and as though you're meant to perform a set of instructions at a specific time in the day, and you're only meant to do this, and you're only meant to do that, and you're only meant to feel this, and you're only meant to feel that. That's ridiculous. So give yourself a break, and if you don't want to do something, don't fucking do it. Honor yourself, honor your feelings, honor who you are, and yes, continue to grow, continue to work on yourself, but don't hold yourself hostage to this notion that you have to be Zen all the time. You don't have to be Zen all the time. I am 100% not of the school of being Zen all the time. Like, if I'm going to flip out, I'm going to flip out. I'm not going to say to myself, oh no, I mustn't. Because some situations call for it. Some situations call for you to shut the fuck up and let someone else do them. And other situations don't call for that. Other situations call for you to stand firm and really be fucking assertive and say, no mate, you shut the fuck up, okay? So honor yourself and go with how you feel, but with awareness. That's the key here. And if you're sitting around like worrying about, you know, days when you have uncontrollable anxiety and you don't know why that is, just give yourself a break. Like, take the pressure off. It's not possible for anyone to go through life totally Zen, because that's not the way that we live. That's not the society that we live in. It's not the way that we make our livings. It's not the way that we interact with other people. It's impossible. It's impossible to hold yourself up to this unattainable standard of being almost machine-like in your emotions, and how grounded you are at times, and how anchored you are, and how well-tempered you are, how even-tempered you are, how mild-tempered you are, how pleasant your tone is, what your heart rate is doing. Like, it's impossible to hold yourself to attain this and to continue to hold yourself to this high standard, this impossible standard, day in and day out for all of eternity. It's just impossible. So give yourself a break, take all the pressure off. There really shouldn't be any pressure. I mean, the whole point of stuff like this is so that you can feel better, not so that you can feel worse. And if you're feeling worse, then just take a fucking break. Do something that you enjoy, do something that makes you feel good. Let go of any expectations that you have in yourself just for today. Just do that for today. If you have any expectations in yourself, if you have like a deadline that you can get away with pushing back, do it. Just do it. And as always, I wish you a fantastic day. And if you aren't having a fantastic day, that's okay too. You don't have to have a fantastic day every day. But know that I'm here and I'll make these videos. And I wish you well. I wish you love and light. And I wish for you to be okay with how things are. Thank you for watching. Thanks for your likes and your subscribes. I haven't checked, but I think I have 31 subscribers now. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And I'll make more videos soon. Let me know if you're interested in this sort of like book review. It's not really a book review, but you know, like me letting you know about, you know, stuff that I've learned and why I like it, and sort of recommending it from that perspective.